Most men never realize the moment they lose authority in a room. It usually happens before they speak, before the handshake, before the introduction, before anyone even knows whether they are competent. Because power is often judged silently. And the uncomfortable truth is, many intelligent men unknowingly dress in ways that quietly reduce how seriously people take them. Not because their clothes are cheap, not because they are unfashionable, but because their appearance communicates uncertainty. Trying too hard, seeking approval, overcompensating. Or worse, emotional immaturity disguised as confidence. And in professional environments, people notice these things instantly. Executives notice. Managers notice. Clients notice. Women notice. Especially in rooms where status matters. Because real authority rarely announces itself loudly. It feels controlled, calm, intentional. And this is where many men accidentally sabotage themselves. They confuse visibility with presence. So they buy louder shoes, tighter shirts, more aggressive watches, trendier outfits, thinking attention equals respect. But attention and authority are not the same thing. In fact, the men who desperately try to look important often look the least secure. You can see it in corporate offices everywhere. A man walks into a meeting wearing expensive clothes that somehow still feel emotionally loud. The fit is too sharp. The branding is too obvious. The styling feels rehearsed. And subconsciously, people feel something is off. Because powerful men rarely look like they are trying to prove they belong. That calmness matters more than most people understand, especially in professional culture. The modern workplace is psychological. People constantly scan for signals, emotional control, competence, reliability, social awareness, discipline. And appearance becomes part of that silent evaluation system. Not because style matters more than skill, but because style changes how quickly people trust your skill. That distinction changes everything. A man who looks emotionally grounded often receives patience, respect, and attention before he even earns it verbally. Another man with equal intelligence may constantly fight to be taken seriously because his presentation creates friction. And most of that friction comes from subtle mistakes, not dramatic ones, silent ones. The first mistake is dressing for admiration instead of authority. There's a difference. Admiration seeks reactions. Authority creates calm. A lot of men unknowingly build their image around being noticed. They want compliments, validation, visible approval, so their clothing choices become emotionally expressive instead of strategically intentional. Too many accessories, too many statement pieces, too much trend chasing. But powerful men understand something deeper. The goal is not to impress everyone. The goal is to remove doubt. That is a completely different mindset, because executives rarely dress like they are entering a fashion competition. They dress like men whose attention is already valuable, and people feel that energy immediately. A clean navy jacket, a properly fitted neutral shirt, minimal distractions, controlled grooming. Simple, but psychologically strong. Because simplicity often signals certainty, and certainty is one of the most attractive forms of power in professional environments. Trying too hard usually signals insecurity. That sentence alone explains half the style mistakes men make. The second mistake is wearing clothing that fights your behavior. This one is subtle. A man speaks softly, but dresses aggressively. Another man wants to appear mature, but styles himself like a social media personality. Someone else wants executive presence, while wearing outfits built around trends designed for attention online. The image becomes emotionally inconsistent, and inconsistency weakens trust. People trust alignment. When appearance, behavior, and emotional energy feel synchronized, authority naturally increases. That's why some men walk into rooms wearing extremely simple clothing and still dominate attention. Nothing feels forced. Their image matches their emotional state. Calm, composed, grounded. And humans instinctively trust emotional coherence. This is also why emotional discipline matters more than expensive clothing. A man constantly adjusting his sleeves, checking reactions, fixing his outfit, or seeking validation unconsciously communicates nervousness. But a composed man wearing basic, clean, well-fitted clothing often appears far more powerful. Because confidence is not visual noise. Confidence is behavioral stillness, and this becomes painfully obvious in high-level environments. Watch experienced executives carefully. Most of them do not look visually complicated, but they look stable. And stability creates authority. Now here's where the psychology becomes uncomfortable. Many men use style to compensate for internal insecurity. Not intentionally, but emotionally. A louder outfit becomes armor. Luxury branding becomes identity support. Trend obsession becomes social survival. And the problem is, people can feel desperation even when they cannot explain it logically. Especially experienced people. Especially powerful people. Because power recognizes emotional neediness immediately. A senior executive once said something brutally accurate during a leadership dinner. The men trying hardest to look successful are usually the least comfortable with themselves. That observation stays with you, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You start noticing how real authority behaves differently. Less performance, more restraint, less emotional urgency, more intentionality. Even posture changes. Powerful men move slower, not because they are arrogant, because they are not seeking permission from the room, and style should support that energy, not fight against it. This is why fit matters more than fashion. Most men over-focus on clothing pieces while ignoring silhouette. A perfectly fitted, simple outfit almost always looks more powerful than an expensive, trendy outfit with poor proportions. Because fit communicates self-awareness, discipline, attention to detail. It tells people this man understands presentation without becoming consumed by it. And executives notice details like that constantly, especially in leadership environments. Wrinkled collars, overly tight pants, distracting sneakers, cheap shiny fabrics, over-accessorizing. These things quietly damage authority. Not dramatically, silently. That is the important distinction. Nobody announces it. Nobody says it directly. But perception shifts, and perception changes opportunity. This becomes even more important as men age professionally. At 22, people forgive experimentation. At 35, people expect clarity. A mature masculine presence feels intentional. Clean grooming, controlled colors, proper fit, good posture, calm energy, not overstyled, not emotionally loud, just sharp enough to communicate self-respect. Because real sophistication is usually invisible. And this is where many modern men become trapped. Social media teaches visibility. Executive environments reward restraint. Completely different psychology. Online culture rewards novelty. Professional culture rewards trust. And trust is built through consistency. The man who always appears composed clean, and intentional, slowly becomes psychologically reliable to others. That reliability creates leadership potential, not hype, not trends, not flashy aesthetics. Reliability. There's also another mistake men rarely discuss: dressing younger in an attempt to feel relevant. This quietly destroys authority for many professionals, because maturity has visual language, and trying too hard to appear youthful often communicates fear of aging instead of confidence. Strong masculine presence embraces simplicity over performance. You do not need to dress old, but you do need to dress emotionally grounded. There is a difference. The most respected men in professional environments often look remarkably uncomplicated, and yet unforgettable. Because presence is emotional before it is visual. People remember how stable you felt, how composed you seemed, how trustworthy your energy appeared. Your clothing simply amplifies that emotional impression. And this is why quiet luxury became psychologically powerful in modern culture. Not because expensive basics magically create status, but because restraint signals abundance. A man comfortable with simplicity often appears more secure than a man constantly performing wealth. Again, attention and authority are not the same thing. One seeks reactions, the other creates respect, and respect usually grows slowly, through consistency, taste, discipline, emotional control, not visual desperation. Eventually, every professional man reaches a point where he must decide what image he wants to build. An image built around validation, or an identity built around quiet confidence. Because the truth is, powerful men are rarely obsessed with looking powerful. They are obsessed with becoming disciplined. And discipline naturally changes appearance. You stand differently. You speak differently. You simplify differently. You stop dressing to impress strangers. You start dressing like a man whose standards already exist internally. That shift changes everything. People feel it immediately. Not because your outfit became magical, but because your image stopped asking for approval. And ironically, that is often when respect begins increasing the fastest. Your appearance will never replace competence, but it absolutely influences how quickly the world recognizes it, especially in silence, especially before you speak, especially in rooms where leadership is judged psychologically long before it is proven logically. And the men who understand this become difficult to ignore, not because they are louder, but because they finally learned how to look emotionally composed, calm, intentional, grounded, like men who belong in important rooms. If you want to build a stronger professional presence and become the kind of man people naturally respect, subscribe for more videos on executive presence, workplace psychology, and modern masculine professionalism.